let's look at some of the freeform tools for making selections in Photoshop. So we have Lasso, Polygon Lasso, Magnetic Lasso tool, and then we also have the Quick Selection tool and Magic Wand tool. All right, so let's start with the Lasso tool. So this is the original selection tool in Photoshop. So basically, all you're going to do is place the cursor, click, hold, and start dragging around what you want to select. Now, the faster you move, chances are you won't be as precise, but you won't find yourself moving the mouse or the stylus around as much. And you can just make a quicker selection, and then you can go back and make some updates. So as an example, I'm just going to get this basic area here, just so we could save some time. All right, so let's just go around. We get back close to our start point and we release. So I'm going to zoom in, and you're going to see that it could take a long time to get an absolutely precise selection. And even though I didn't mean to, I went outside a little bit here. Let's take a look at our tools up across the top in the control area. We have our selection tool. We have the tool that will allow us to add to a selection, take away from a selection, and intersect with selections. And then this is important, the feather. The default is the feather is set to 0, but you should check, because people, or you might even have changed this and forgot to set it back before you start doing a selection. And nothing worse than having a feather of 10, 20, whatever pixels, and you've just worked really hard on a selection and it's ruined because it has a feather on it and that wasn't your intent. So it's a good idea to sort of review before you get started. We want to leave anti-aliasing on. Anti-aliasing is going to give us a nice transition between what we're selecting and what's outside of the selection. So if you can imagine, if we have a selection right here where I'm moving the cursor and we have a few pixels of anti-alias, then that anti-alias is going to be some of the same pixel tones, color tones that are inside the image, which should give us a softer image. If you had a selection, I mean, if you just made a perfect selection right on the outside, you're going to get some of the outside pixels, and that's going to give you this colored halo. So you're always better coming inside, I don't know, let's say between 3 and 5 pixels inside what you're trying to select. All right, so we've made this basic selection with the Lasso tool. We already know it's going to take a long time to get a good selection, but we block it in, we go and we get the option to add to a selection. So now we can start inside, click, hold, drag, and I'm just going to stay several pixels inside, okay? And then we come back inside, close to our start point, and we release. The third option allows you to take away from a selection. So we could start on the outside, click, hold, drag, come in, again, a few pixels inside the area we want, and we come back out and close to the start point. Now, you can imagine going back and forth between these tools and going all the way, whoops, I accidentally clicked and moved on it. Make sure I didn't mean to click this one, I meant the second one here. If you can imagine going inside, or from the inside out, coming back in, and doing this all the way around the image. Well, it's what you have to do sometimes, all right? It really depends on what it is you're trying to select, but you get the idea. You could use the Polygon Lasso tool, toggle back and forth between add to selection, take away from selection, until you go all the way around your selection. All right, so I'm just going to go back to my start point. Command D, whenever you hear me say command on a PC, it will be control. Okay, so I'm going to deselect, so command D, and now let's try the Polygon Lasso tool. Same thing. You have your selection, you can add to a selection, you can take away from a selection. I'm going to verify the feather is off, the anti-aliasing is on. Now this tool works best, I believe, if you really zoom into what you're doing. This is a click, release, drag, click sort of operation. So click, release, drag, and you can see I can just do these little line segments, and little line segments will give you curves. And again, I want to come to the inside, and I'm just sort of following this path. Now, we're not going to go around this because it would take forever, but let's just come back over here, click, move our way around, short little segments to get curves like so, and back to the beginning and click, and you have your selection. Now it's the same with adding and taking away. Add, start from the inside, go out, come back inside, or you start from the outside, come inside, go back outside to take away from a selection. Now you would just continue with this process until you get all the way around your image. Let's take a look at another tool, see if we can speed this up some. So we'll deselect. I'll do Command 0 to fill my screen with my image. Now let's take a look at the magnetic lasso tool. Again, we can add and take away. There's a feather, an anti-alias, but now you're seeing a width, a contrast, and a frequency. Now the width, this is the distance from the edge to consider the path. So it's kind of how far away we can get from what we're trying to select into the area we're not trying to select. The contrast is the contrast of value, the contrast of color between what you're selecting and what's on the outside. Okay, so we can adjust the amount of contrast, higher or lower, depending on how much contrast there is. Okay, so less contrast, more contrast. The frequency, the default is 57. So if we just get our tool here and just make sure I'm on my layer, and if I just start again towards the inside, you see how the tool is sort of figuring things out for me? And see how much faster we could certainly block in what we're doing. Now I'm going to come back to the beginning-ish, there we go, and release, and then click. And we now have our selection. So the frequency is how often we make a sample. So if I deselect and I start to drag, look and see just a note how far the little rectangles are between each other. All right, then we'll come back, double click, whoops, I double clicked too much, and delete and deselected. Let's change our frequency. Let's try 99. Okay, and now start dragging, and you see that you have a lot more sample points. And you can see, you can even pick your mouse up and we can move on. We can always come back and fix things, but the whole point is, so these tools allow you to make selections a lot faster, but some are much more precise. All right, so I'm just going to come back and release, and there is my selection. So now I could use some of the other tools to make modifications. So I could go back and get the lasso tool, zoom in on part of my selection here, and I want to get the tool to take away. So I start from the outside and we just go a few pixels inside like so and come back out. And then we would continue to do this all the way around our image. Okay, so I'm going to zoom back out, and let's go ahead and again deselect, Command D, and I'll fill my screen, Command 0. Now the magic wand, this tool works great if there's a lot of contrast, like black and white, or one color and a completely different color. So as an example, if we did the magic wand, and we're going to keep this at point sample. The tolerance, we can decrease or increase the tolerance. And we can also set if something is contiguous or not, if we're going to go all the way around something, or if we're going to allow spots of something to not be added. You'll have to experiment with it to see what's going on. But let's say we leave the defaults here, and we click on the tomato. And you see all of these samples. That's because this thing is being, it has a lower tolerance. Okay, so Command D, let's set this to 100, and now click in the red area. It's much, much more tolerant of the tonal values. So Command D, and let's try 50, and we'll click. And you notice we're getting closer. And of course, you can add to your selection, and you can continue to add to your selection. All right. And this is great if you have really distinct tonal differences. So Command D, so if we click in the white area, you can see how it's much easier to select the high contrast. So Command D, maybe like on this avocado. So we have this green, but then there's all these greens over here. So the magic wand it's a nice tool. It works well, but you have to have high contrast, okay? Like like in the gray, as soon as even I got in this this wood tone area here, then it found all these other very similar values. So Magic Wand's a good tool, but you have to have some really good contrast. Let's take a look at the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool also allows you to select, add to selections, take away, but this one works like painting. So if we click and we change our brush size, and we make our brush larger, you see how our brush gets bigger, okay? And the bigger the brush, the more tolerant the tool is. The smaller the brush, the more precise. So we might start off with sort of a larger size, and then the hardness is, just think of, do you want a selection with a really hard edge, or are you going to soften up that edge a little bit? So I'm just going to bring this down a little bit, and you're going to have to practice. I tend to always bring the spacing down to its lowest, and think of the spacing on a brush like a brush loaded with paint, and you load up the brush, and you drag the brush across, and at a certain point the paint starts to get used up, and you start getting those little dashes as your brush is unloading. That's what the spacing is here. All right, so if we start in the middle and I click and I just drag, okay, you can see that the tool is trying to figure out the tonal ranges, and it's helping me out. So I don't want to get too crazy with this. I think I just edge into it a little bit, and when I get a little closer to the edges, I'll just go real slow, okay? Then I might even bring the brush size down, and maybe even the hardness up a little bit, and this will allow me to be a bit more precise, okay? So let's just get this in a little bit better. We'll just go around our image. We want to get some of our bowl down here. Now it went too far at the bottom. That's all right. So I'm not going to worry about this being perfect. You'll get the idea. You can invest the time making your selection perfect. Okay. So let's just get this part in right there. Let's fix the bottom here. And I'm going to fix the bottom. I'll make a much smaller brush. And then we'll go to the subtract. And let's zoom out a little bit. Command minus. And let's see if we can clean this up some. All right, so it went way too far. So let's get the brush to add and we'll have to just get part of the bowl in here, and then we'll fix it ourselves. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom in, tab this or drag this over. I'll get the Polygon Lasso tool. I'm going to start from the outside, so we're going to use the deselect here. We'll start from the outside, come in, and we're just going to go around our bowl like so. Then I want to add some here. Okay, so I'll stay with the Polygon Lasso tool. This time we're going to add to our selection. So I'll start from the inside, and again, I'm not going to worry about being overly precise. That'll make this video last way too long. So I'm just going to go around like so. And then I see I actually have some inside here, so I'm going to go around. Okay, and let's go ahead and let's just say we're gonna leave some of this. It's not perfect, but we're gonna leave some of it the way it is. This time I'm going to use the lasso tool, start from the inside, so we're gonna add, and then I'm just going to come through here like so. Okay, and then let's use the minus tool and come from the outside, and I'm just going to clean up this area right here a little bit. Okay, and then command minus to zoom out, and let's just say this is our selection. We're happy with this selection. We've spent all of our countless hours getting this perfect. Well, what I suggest you might do while you're working, just in case something happens, go up to the select menu, and then what you're going to do is save your selection. Okay, and then you can save this as a new channel. All right, you can even give it a name. Maybe we call this mask try 1, and we're going to click OK. Okay, that way if something happens, if it were deselected, then we could go to our, not to our layers, we can go to our channels, and we can open up our channels palette a little bit more, and you will see your mask. And all you have to do, see if we select the mask, we're going to see that channel. So if I go back to the RGB composite and then just hold the command key and hold the cursor over the mask icon here and click, we get our mask back. Okay, so you might want to save your selections as channels, and that way you'll have your progress in case something happens, because nothing worse than working on something a long time and then losing that. All right, so what we're going to do now is let's explore. We're going to zoom in a little bit. All right. And let's just take a look at our edge here, our marching ants. So let's go up to the select menu, and we're going to go to modify. And what we're going to do is smooth our selection. And I tend to always smooth selections by about 2 pixels. And then we'll go back to select, modify, and in this case I'm going to contract my selection. And I'm just going to bring this in by about 2 pixels. Usually between 2 and 4, you're going to have to experiment. So I'll bring my selection in just a little bit, okay? And I'm not sure, I must have done something with a key command to get this ghosted edge around there. So I'm just going to go ahead and modify, contract, and I'm going to come in by 2 more pixels. Now that way I'm not, whatever I did out there, it's not going to come back and haunt me, okay? So now I'm going to go to select and modify, and you might want to experiment with this. I'm going to feather this by just 1 pixel, very slightly, okay? Then we're going to zoom out, And on our layers, I'm making sure I'm on this layer. Let's go ahead and we could either we could click, I'm not going to do this, but we could click our mask, and that would create a mask based off of this selection. In this case, I want my image, this freeform image, just to be on its own layer. So let's go up and copy, and then we're going to paste. And you'll see that your layer, so let's just call this guac. And I think in another one I called it alpha, so we'll call this alpha or mask, either way, okay? And then we're going to hide the bottom layer. And let's just go ahead and create a new layer. We'll drag this underneath our guac, and then I'll just take my foreground color here, and where's my paint bucket? Let's just pour our color in. And you can see, even as quickly as we did this, we're getting a pretty good edge on our image. Now, of course, we would want to take the time to really clean this up, okay? But the point is, you can use your different selection tools. You can use combinations of your selection tools to create what are masks, or the selections which you can turn into a mask. Don't forget that you can always go to select and save a selection, okay? And then you would end up having a channel that you can always go back to. Remember that you can store those selections in channels. Now it's just a matter of exporting your image. And just like before, you can do export as. If you want this to in fact be transparent, then you're going to have to choose PNG and then make up your mind. You notice this is 4 megabytes, so we would probably want a smaller 8-bit 256 color image. And then I remember, if I recall, we were working with an 800 by a 450. So if we made our width 800, and that was in exercise 4 for our hero image. So if we wanted our width to be 800, you notice that the height is 1292. So I would probably have to go in and make this one let me put this back to 800. Maybe I didn't click on it, so it didn't change. All right, so this is going to go 798 by 572. And it's okay on the width, but in that exercise, we had a height limit of 450. So if we change and place the focus on the height, we now have we meet our height, and we just have a smaller width image in that area. But being that it's freeform, that would probably be not too big of a deal. Let's go ahead and scroll down and make sure we embed our color profile. And then right now our image is 1-up. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea to go ahead and include a 2-up or a 2 times density, and even possibly a 3 time density, depending on different mobile devices. So we're here, we have it, we might as well export the various aspect ratios, resolutions, which we might need. So let's go ahead and export all, and inside the image demo, inside my images, and the problem is it's going to overwrite. I already had guac alpha in here, so it's going to overwrite those. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel this for a moment, and I'm going to rename my image to guac 2. Now let's go ahead and export as. Smaller file size. We'll set this to be 450 on the height. And then we're going to make sure we add our 2-up. We'll add our 3-up for pixel density on different devices. Let's add our embed, and now we can go ahead and export. And we're going to have this go into our images, and we shouldn't, so it'll go into our images folder, and we won't overwrite our original images. So we'll let this save. I'm going to open my images, and there we are with our new images written inside. Here's our 1-up. Oh, got the wrong one there. I think it's this one here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so there's our image with more of a free-form selection using the combination of the selection tools in Photoshop.